Yeah, I have a 2014 Jeep Cherokee, and yes, I too have the infamous service four-wheel drive light. I have 160,000 miles on this vehicle, and okay, so removing this PTU to diagnose what's wrong with it is quite the process. First, you have to disconnect the CV joint on the passenger side by just prying it out, pulling it out of the PTU unit, which would sit right here in this space. Then you have to separate the lower ball joint from the lower control arm and push it back a little bit to get it outside of the PTU. Okay, so removing this, you have to pull the CV joint out of the PTU, which would be here. You gotta disconnect the lower control arm from the ball joint, lower ball joint, push it aside so that this will come out of the PTU. Then the nightmare begins when you have to disassemble the catalytic converter that's above the PTU. I found that it's easier to reach the top bolts from the top of the motor by removing the air box with the two small hoses. I'll show you that in a minute. But you have to take out the exhaust pipe that goes from this catalytic converter that runs back there to the main pipe. You also have to disconnect the drive shaft to the rear differential, which is a pain in the ass because you got to disconnect all this, take it off the rear differential and slide it back, and this doesn't want to come apart after 160,000 miles, so it was quite that battle. Sorry I didn't film this because it took me about 4 hours to get this apart. So after you dismantle all the exhaust pipes, everything apart, you're able to push the cat to the side. You're able to slide the PTU down and out. Once I got it out, I was able to take it apart. I'll show you that in a second. So here I took the PTU apart, I took it out, and I took the whole PTU down to pieces to see what was wrong with it. Took the oil out. There's no metal parts, no fragments. Took the oil. I'm going to change the oil since I got it apart. But I broke the whole transfer case down to pieces to look at all the parts. Nothing wrong with it. But the problem with it is the module, the actuator, the poorly designed actuator, was full of oil. And I don't know about your electric motors, but the electric motors that I know of that are supposed to be in an oil liquid are supposed to be sealed. Well, these motors are not sealed, and the inside of this $20 electric motor was full of oil, causing it to fail. I could have found another motor for 20 bucks, but looking at the board, I took the circuit board out as well since I was going to replace it. The circuit board is soaked in oil. I can't imagine it's going to last much longer than the typical piece of garbage. So here's the shift actuator. You can see the housing is full of oil. This is where the motor would sit, right here. All the gears are fine, springs. Here's the other half. This is where the motor sits in here, like that. And then this went over like this. And you can see they have a gasket. But that gasket didn't do a damn thing because it was full of oil when I opened it up, causing a $20 part to fail for a $600 part to buy. Bunch of stupid idiots. So I've already got the replacement. I'm just waiting for the new oil. I'm going to refill it with oil, and I'll try to put a video together when I put all this back together and back in the vehicle. Should be faster because I already know what has to happen.